just want to return to this thing I was thinking about this morning, which is to do with the Enlightenment, and specifically the way that Damasio used that term in the talk I mentioned, which is this conversation he was having with the artist Marina Abramovich. And he was using the term enlightenment to mean that moment which perhaps occurs during certain meditative practices, when you kind of go underneath perception, you recognise perception and let that drift away, and then you get beyond emotions, so you see those emotions as if detached from yourself and let them go away. And obviously all bodily experience, that goes away. Thoughts, you see thoughts emerge and then drift away. And what you're doing in that, kind of to paraphrase Damasio, is you're moving away from the autobiographical self, moving in past those layers of autobiography that are kind of accreted around you through being alive, and past the layers of perception, kind of inside of the instrumentation of one's own senses, until eventually you reach a point where the only thing that you're experiencing is the experience itself, is the experiencer. There's just this sense of being alive and awake, with no content inside of that, no content to refer that to, there's no aboutness to it, there's no direction for it, there's no objects of that consciousness. There is just this sense, which, as I say, Damasio associates with certain processes in the brainstem, and which he attributes not just to humans but to many other animals, including possibly even non-vertebrates. So, and that's, as I say, Damasio in that talk, I don't know if he does it elsewhere, refers to that state as being one of enlightenment. And he's deliberately using that term non-spiritually. He's not referring to any kind of spiritual tradition. He's purely talking about the experience of that particular brain state. But I've been thinking about that, and I'm just thinking in terms of philosophy. I don't mean philosophy in the sense of the academic discipline, but just as a structured thought. Is there a way of thinking about that experience as a basis for a philosophy, in the same way that we use this experience of looking through your senses, through your thoughts, through your emotions, out into the world, as the basis for natural philosophy? Because that's in a sense what we do, isn't it? Science, what used to be called natural philosophy, is built around or based upon looking through those senses, looking through the instrumentation of one's own body initially, and then through the various devices that augment that sensory instrumentality, and through thoughts, and the various ideas and concepts and theories that we derive, and through language and through all that kind of stuff. It's having all that and looking through it that gives us this natural philosophy of science. So is there a correlate or a parallel, or even maybe an opposite or a complement to that comes from the experiences of looking in and seeing this unique point? Not seeing but being, or something like that anyway. I'd have to say, I think, if I'm going to explore that, I would have to say that it would in no way, at least from my perspective, jeopardise the true status of science, or jeopardise the incredible high value that empiricism and the pragmatics of looking through the senses and instrumentation and sharing those sensory engagements with other folk to create bodies of knowledge. I don't think there's anything to displace that, and I'm not convinced that introspection would do that. But okay, let me just start from that. Okay, so you've done this exercise, you've done the meditation, or maybe you've put 10,000 hours in doing the meditation for real, and you've managed to do all this stripping away and moving behind those various veils and layers of instrumentation and sensory engagement and memory and desire and thought, until there is just this still centre of that particular turning world, that unique point of beingness. What can you say about that? Well, first thing I would say is it's probably indivisible, because if it was divisible, then you wouldn't have stripped all the layers. So you'd have to acknowledge that this point is indivisible. Obviously, because you asked, if I can just translate purely into biochemistry and physics and brain science for a moment, whatever's happening in your brain there, if anything less happened, you wouldn't be conscious anymore. So it must, or if any additional process augmented that, then you become conscious of something. So it's got to be indivisible. That's the first part. The second thing about it is, it's probably singular, by which I mean that if you keep going back to that state, it seems most likely that you'll be finding the same state each time. This single contentless point, where it's just the experience of basic brain stem life, wakefulness. That's it. So it'll be singular. Following on from that, it's probably singular, not just for one individual, but for anybody who does it. I suspect if you were to do that, and I was to do that, and other people were to do that, given its indivisibility and giving it uniqueness, it would probably, and its singularity, we would probably all arrive at effectively the same point. So in the same way that, effectively all protons are interchangeable, all photons are interchangeable. There's nothing to distinguish one photon from another because they are singular and indivisible, or electron or whatever. So by analogy, in this case, that singular point, the spark of wakefulness in your brainstem is singular. There's only one of them, or to all intents and purposes, there's only one of them. And whenever we go into that meditative state, we all go to the same point. So that'd be that. Okay, so singular, indivisible, unique for all participants, and probably totalizing, I would guess, because if you're in that point, I'm not sure totalizing is a good word, but I think because just from personal experience, but it seems to make kind of sense, if you are at that point, then that is the entirety of your experience, the entirety of your world is there. In the same way that, yes, of course I know that there is a world beyond these trees here in this park in Cheshire, and I know there is a universe beyond the sky, but my sensory engagement stops at the edge of my vision and my hearing. It just stops there. So this is my world. Phenomenologically, this is my world. I'd have to go extrasensory in the most literal sense to be able to think what's beyond these trees. And similarly, I think if we're going to do this introspective thing, the singular point at the centre of that process would constitute a totality of existence for the person who's experiencing it in a kind of quasi-phenomenological sense. So that's one more time, let's rehearse. It'd be singular, there's only one of them. Whoever finds it, there's only one of them. If you go there, if I go there, 1,000 people go there, we all go to that same place. It's a place which is indivisible. It's a place which is singular, there's only one of them. And it's a place which is universal or totalizing. Okay, I'll leave for now.